What is up, Light Fam? Welcome to another video. My name is David, your spiritual awakening coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. Today's video is a bit unexpected for me. I was not planning on doing a video on this topic, but there's been a pretty consistent trend over the last couple of weeks of people reaching out to me telling me that they are being harassed by evil spirits after having a spiritual awakening. One person messaged me and said that after she opened her chakras, the chakras are now serving as a portal for evil spirits to get in and harass her in her dreams. And she's decided to cut all ties with spirituality and go back to Christianity. I had one person leave a comment under a video. I just woke up, but these evil spirits won't let me keep Jesus. And he's asking, is a spiritual awakening demonic? And these are just a couple of examples. So apparently this is a thing. Now, of course, these are this video is mainly for people that have just woken up. So they still have those old fear-based ties to religious programming. But if you've been on your spiritual path for a minute, you know that this is not obviously a concern. But keeping in the theme of spirituality for beginners, I did want to address this so that people are not scared to have a spiritual awakening and they don't allow fear to stunt their spiritual growth. So, we like to keep these topics juicy, Light Fam. It's another juicy one at Lightweights. All right, so let's get into this topic of, is a spiritual awakening evil or bad right now? Let's go. Spirituality for beginners. Is a spiritual awakening evil? I wanted to start this off by giving a different perspective on the term darkness. We are programmed is too mild. We are indoctrinated to believe since childhood that darkness equals evil. And not just from the religious books. In TV, movies, aren't the villains always wearing black? Look at Darth Vader, right? It doesn't matter if it is a Disney cartoon. The villain is always like these witches that are wearing black, like Maleficent, So we're indoctrinated to believe that dark equals evil. Even in everyday life. Why is it the black cat that is responsible for bad luck? So this reinforcement and just constant bombardment that dark equals evil is deeply ingrained in our subconscious. It's a very tough concept to let go of. So I wanted to get some inspiration for this concept of darkness. So I just decided to Google the term darkness. Dr. Google says that darkness is the partial or total absence of light. That's awfully anticlimactic. Where's the evil part? Where's the demons? We need some demons to make this thing sexy. Come on, give me something to work with here. Guys, darkness is simply the partial or total absence of light. This says nothing about evil, nothing about bad or negativity. It's simply the absence of light. Would anybody look at the yin and yang symbol, which is a symbol of balance, by the way, and look at the darker image of that yin and yang symbol, which is yin? Would anyone look at yin and say yin is evil? No, it's part of the whole makeup. It's kind of the same as if a rose was out in the sun 24 hours a day, it would burn up and dry up. It needs the darkness, it needs the night to rejuvenate before it goes into the light again. So there's nothing frivolous in the universe. All energetic densities are necessary. So how do we come into a greater understanding of the nature of this darker, denser energy? Well, we can look to shadow work as an example. So the thicker, denser, darker energy is usually more associated with trauma, fear, shame, guilt, self-loathing, which just means that darker, denser energy is just partially or totally absent of light, or absent of the lighter frequency energy that is in more vibrational alignment with love. Spirituality for beginners. Is a spiritual awakening evil? Well, let's look at that term, spiritual awakening. Let's examine that word awakening. What does it mean to awaken? Well, open your eyes. What do you see when your eyes are closed? Darkness. Don't you think you have a better shot at seeing light when your eyes are open? And this is why a spiritual awakening can never be evil, because you're opening your eyes to allow the light to come in, shine through the darkness, and illuminate that spiritual truth. Before that spiritual awakening, the light was not able to make it in and illuminate that truth. Before that spiritual awakening, you were living in the darkness of believing the lies of fear, and that light could make it in to those closed eyes to illuminate your spiritual truth for you. But more on that a little bit later in the video. Right now, I really want to lean into this subject of dark entities attacking you in your dreams after a spiritual awakening. Remember, a spiritual awakening is all about leaving behind that old, limited identity that is no longer serving you and birthing that new, fearless, unlimited identity that allows you to align with the light that you actually are. And who did we say in previous videos was in charge of your identity? Oh yeah, back by popular demand, it's your ego. So you guys will remember in previous videos when I talk about the dark night of the soul, which is also known as ego death. So that old ego identity is in the process of dying and giving way to the new, fearless, unlimited identity that's trying to birth itself into your current timeline. And that old identity will fight its hardest tooth and nail right before it dies. So what do we have access to when we dream? Our subconscious. Where does our egoic perception of self reside? Our subconscious. So it would make sense that when you dream and you experience these dark entities, you're really just experiencing that old subconscious ego identity that is trying to scare you to stay in the familiar so that it can preserve itself, it can stay alive. And that old identity's ego, its perception of self usually comes from religious upbringing, which is usually heavily steeped in fear and duality. So yes, you are accessing your subconscious mind where that old, archaic, limited ego knows that its days are swiftly coming to an end, and it will try to scare you to stay in the familiar. The ego equates familiarity with safety. So, we're scared, we're limited, we're not living our dreams, but at least we're in the familiar where it's safe. The ego doesn't know that on the other side of fearless growth and change and spiritual expansion is freedom. Spiritual awakening for beginners. If you have just woken up, then do not let fear stop your spiritual growth. You have to trust that you've had a spiritual awakening for a reason. And know that reason is not so that the devil can tempt you and test your faith. Your higher self, source, your spirit guides have all orchestrated the impactful events that sparked your spiritual awakening for a reason. And since you are also a fractal of source consciousness, that means that reason has to be for your greatest and highest good. Otherwise, source would be divided against itself, and that can't happen. So it's impossible for a spiritual awakening to be a bad thing, because it's moving you from more of a fear-based energy towards a love-based energy. Or another way of saying that, it's moving you from the highest level of vibrational dissonance from source, which is fear, towards source energy, which is the highest level of vibrational congruence with love. Spirituality for beginners. If you are questioning if a spiritual awakening is evil, just remember that a spiritual awakening is waking up from the ego. the ego is all about fear. If you were walking around fearing something, whether it be an evil character from a fable in a religious book, or fearing straying from the righteous path, you're a prisoner of fear. That doesn't sound like a very freeing thing to me. If you're living in fear, then you have a captor, you have a jailer, and that is fear. It's only when we step in our true identity as source energy, having a temporary physical experience, can we live totally free and fearless, knowing that there's nothing to fear because there is not anything which source is not, including you and including the darkness. Spirituality for beginners. If you are in fear, if you're in the darkness, then you need to realign with yourself as source energy and shed your light onto the darkness. Darkness, as we said, is just the absence of light. And since source consciousness is all things and you are a fractal of source consciousness, step into your divine birthright. Shed that divine light onto the darkness. Fear typically doesn't exist in the light. Why? Well, because we can see it. It's only when we're in the darkness that the ego will step in and tell you that you need to be scared of all kinds of things because the ego can't see everything in the darkness. And when the ego can't see everything, it can't know everything. And when it can't know everything, it can't control everything. Yes, the ego is all about control. That's the ego's game. Better go back to that fear-based paradigm that you just came from. At least it's familiar and safe there. Yeah, familiar doesn't always equal safe. And any system that teaches fear and duality is the opposite of love. And since the dominant frequency of source consciousness is love, make no mistake that love will never try to scare you into obedience. Only ego does that. Spirituality for beginners. If you are worried that a spiritual awakening is evil, then just remember that nothing in the universe can be designed for the detriment or degradation of source. If that were the case, then that means that source would be divided against itself, and that cannot be. So constant conscious expansion is the main objective of source consciousness, not the opposite. If you need a helping hand on your spiritual awakening journey, we can work one-on-one through Zoom. Check the description below for that. And now it is time for question of the day. What are you fearing about your spiritual awakening? Let us know in the comments below, Light Fam. I might be able to, well, not that I might, I would definitely be able to add some insight on whatever those fears are. I'm here to help you guys. Also, remember to add me over on Instagram _Lightways. I do answer a lot of questions over there. We got a guided meditation in the description below. It's a guided meditation on abundance. It's been out a while. I'm in the process of doing a bunch of new guided meditations, so keep an eye out for that. If you know anyone that is struggling on their spiritual awakening and they are experiencing evil spirits or having second thoughts about leaving a fear-based paradigm and they're worried about their spiritual growth, please share this video with them. It may give them the insight that they need to live fearlessly and grow spiritually. I am done rambling. I will see all you guys in the next video. Light, love, and abundance to all that are watching and to all you love. Peace, guys.